Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hello and welcome to The Print. The Indian economy is forecast to see a sharp contraction this fiscal as the pandemic has impacted many sectors. At The Print, we bring you interviews with senior industry leaders to understand the impact of the pandemic as well as the unlock phase of the economy. We have today with us Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani, the chairman of ASSOCHAM. Welcome, sir, and thank you so much for taking out time, sir.
Thank you very much, Amia.
I wanted to begin by asking you, sir, that what is your assessment of the unlock phase?
I think the unlocking of it is actually differentiated in different locations in the country, quite rightly so, because in the places where the effect is marginal or what you can call green areas, I think the functionings have started. So if your factory or infrastructure project is stuck in the green areas, most of them are back on track. So that's the first thing. The second thing is those factories relating to items where the demand is not there, even though being in green areas, have not been able to start simply because the demand is not there. So like, for instance, car factories and others relating to local demand are finding it difficult to get back to productions, not only because they are not able to get the workmen, which may be the case in some of the cases, but also because of the fact that the demand is mitigated. And with the demand mitigation taking place, obviously increasing productive activity is not making sense. So you have a duality. And the third factor is a place where production is there in the containment zones. So those are the challenges which are there. And I would like to add the fourth, if I may. And the fourth is where they have opened out and locked in again. And I think that's a disaster, because what is happening is it's difficult to get the lines of materials to come in, difficult to get the workers back. And then if you have to do a lockdown again, I think there is a major problem of disruption in that case, which becomes almost impossible for people to handle. So I think we have four types of cases that we run with Remia.
Right. Do you think that it is because of this, the whole fact that many states have now opting again for a lockdown? It obviously makes it very difficult for manufacturing units to plan their production. Do you think there's need for a better planning, probably greater coordination between the states and the center, especially so that, at least manufacturing units don't get hurt?
I think as far as manufacturing is concerned, there are two aspects to it again. The first aspect is those workers who are, as part of the production unit, staying and residing adjoining to the projects, like the construction workers. There's a differentiated position where the workers are in situ. So those cases should not be stopped at all, even by the local authorities. And exceptions have been made in those cases along the way. Even in Maharashtra, originally they did not permit these construction works to do of the workers who are already there on the site. But that change has taken place, and now they are giving permission for the purpose of the construction workers in situ. So even when there is a lockdown condition, I think we need to keep it open, especially when the construction labor are either in the factory or in the adjoining premises to do that, so that the disruption does not continue, not only for the essential items, but for the other items also. I think it's extremely important to do so.
Right. And what is your assessment of the fact that are migrant laborers coming back, or are they actually waiting for greater certainty, especially given these return of lockdowns?
Remia, let me assure you that the workers are coming back. Obviously, they are not coming back at the same pace that they have left. So you're not seeing a reverse migration, which is huge and humongous at one time, where people are now planning out, they're finding out what trains are available, they're not rushing to the stations, they're making their bookings, people are arranging buses for them to come, skilled workers are being brought in by plane, they're being brought in by buses, and so all sorts of things are being done, both from the employer's point and also the employee's point. So many of them are now tired of being in their homes, in their home places, because there is no jobs really to be obtained. And number two, those which are skilled workers are very well paid in these other, in the factories and cities and metropolitan areas and small towns. So obviously they want to go back to their own work. Everybody is aspirational in their lives, and hence that movement back is there. But it is a trickle as compared to a tide. But I'm sure that this will continue to happen slowly but surely.
Is it uniform across states, sir, or are some states getting more of the migrant laborers returning?
I think everybody is getting it. It's more dependent on the need of the employer. Number two, the need of the employee. And also the factor that in certain areas, the kind of assistance given to the workers is more. So for example, let's take my construction site. It's well sanitized. We give masks, we do segregating distances. We are giving food to the workmen in the project area. We see to it that the doctors see them at least twice a week. We've been doing the rapid testing for some of the workers, small numbers every week, say 5% of the workers every week. We try to do the rapid test so that in case something happens, they are immediately taken care of by the medical fraternity, and facilities are given. So I think a kind of assurance needs to be given to them, which is not possible for everybody to do. So quite rightly so, people are worried about it. Number two, all are not workers. Many of them are self-employed people who went away. So for instance, the feriwalas, the people who are vegetable vendors, who used to work on their own as far as this is concerned. So many of the house workers who were there were actually there. And I think all sorts of people have gone away. And you can't say these are only construction migrant workers or factory workers. It's a very, very big spread of people that are required.
Sir, the government and the Reserve Bank of India have announced many measures, to support industry, but most of them have been in the form of liquidity support. Do you think there should be more measures right now, given the fact that, there are some green shoots that the government itself is saying that, the economy is witnessing?
My reading and our reading is that the first thing that needs to be done by the Reserve Bank is to do a one-time rollover. This was also done in 2008 by the Reserve Bank during the Lehman crisis. And today the crisis is only 100 times more severe. So I think we have represented to them that we need to do a one-time rollover. And this has been supported by the other associations, CII and FICCI also, saying that this is the need of the hour and you need to do it. Because otherwise, by the end of the year, the catastrophe that will take place in the financial system will be unbearable, and the banking system would collapse if they don't do it. So I think it's imperative that such a step needs to be taken. The second part is important, which you have just mentioned, is the liquidity crisis. And I think the liquidity crisis in the case of SMEs is partially mitigated because of the guarantee which has been given by the central government. But other industries and businesses also need it. So whether it's real estate, whether it is hotels, whether it's aviation, travel and tourism, you pick up all the other trades which are taking place, whether they are salons, restaurants, all these things are in difficulty. So we do need a kind of assistance in these sectors also, which is not coming. So that's where I think it is necessary. And the third, which I think now is most important, and I think it's not figuring in most of the media, is the demand creation. While the supply side economics has been addressed by the government, maybe not to my satisfaction or your satisfaction or our satisfaction, but at least an effort has been made on the supply end. But on the demand side, nothing has happened. So we do need demand side incentives to really come out into the marketplace. And we are talking about we need a reduction in GST. We have suggested that there could be a 50% cut in GST for the next 6 months in order to instigate demand, not only real estate, but across the board.
So the government seems to be waiting for a COVID vaccine to announce some kind of a push, demand push. This chief economic advisor a couple of days back talked about it in one seminar. how probably a COVID vaccine would bring certainty for consumers, and probably that is the right time for a demand push to ensure that consumers actually spend rather than save. But do you think that will be a bit too late?
First of all, I don't know when the vaccine is coming. So if the chief economic advisor can tell us when the vaccine will come, then it's okay.
He
But
said
if the
next few
vaccine is
months.
going to take time, then it will be too late. So what is necessary is to bring the thing into position now, just like the opening up is taking place, though a calibrated one as of now. I think it is necessary to push demand now to come into the place. Yes, it would be fantastic if the vaccine came, but I think probably the optimistic date seems to be October, November, seems to be the optimistic date, though I'm not the expert on it, and you can't rely on my statement, nor can I rely on the statement of the chief economic advisor as to the date of the vaccine, because it's unfortunately, we still don't have a full vaccine for Ebola or H1N1, though it's been going on for so long. So I can't say, let's not wait for the vaccine. We have to be far more proactive in our measures in terms of demand creation. And yes, if the vaccine came and you did it, fantastic. But if the vaccine doesn't come or it is delayed, I think we need to take the steps on the demand creation, which is imperative.
Besides GST rate cuts, any other measures that you have proposed to the government?
Well, there are lots of measures that we can do. For instance, the stamp duty waivers could be done in the case of real estate. I think that's an important factor to be done. There are, for restaurants and others, there could be local taxes and other things which are there, which could be done by the state government. So you could take a sectoral position, which could be very big. A reduction in the rates of income tax or other things, or additional depreciation to be permitted during the COVID period, and other things, so as to save the amount in terms of taxes to be paid, effective income tax payable to the whole thing. The rest of the funds would be available with the businesses. So plenty, but I think the easiest would be GST, which would be funded by a kind of a central government payout that should take place. You can't take it from the states because the states are anyway deficit. So you'll have to do it from a central government pool.
But so does the central government have money? That seems to be the big question, right? Because tax revenues have dried up to a large extent.
Yeah, but it's a chicken and egg. If you don't get the demand, you're not going to get the income. If you're not going to get the income, you're not going to get the taxes. So if you drive demand, you will get all that and you'll get the GDP coming back. So if you don't create demand, if you don't push demand and create an incentive to demand, so for instance, let's say you need to buy a mobile, or you need to buy a car, or you need to buy a house. You will say, oh, now is the COVID times, let me postpone buying it to next year. All right. Or you will say, no, the GST is now brought to zero for the next 2 months. Let me buy my mobile today because I will save my 12% or 18% on the GST on the mobile. Or I'm buying a motor car. So, I mean, the 12% or 18%, I don't remember the figure, on the motor car. So I would buy it otherwise next year. But, oh, now there is no GST. I'll buy it this year because I'm anyway getting a lower price for the car today, plus I'm buying a GST. Same thing for housing. I'm buying a house. I have to pay 5% GST. The prices are subdued. I'll buy a house now, and there is zero GST even for under construction project. So the idea is to instigate demand. Now, once you instigate demand, your GST collections go up, which today anyway will become low because there is no demand. So it's a chicken and egg. So that's why the rate cut of GST actually will instigate demand and ultimately increase GST collections.
So, which sectors do you think are seeing some kind of a revival right now, and which will probably, be hit for a longer period of time?
So I think number one is definitely pharmaceuticals, essential items of goods, fast-moving consumer goods. I think these have done extremely well and are continuing to do very, very well in the under. Many of the factories which are doing exports have started doing extremely well. I know a textile unit which had almost in March lost all its orders, is back to 70% of its production on export orders. It's a very large textile unit. So we find a good productivity has taken place. So I think those sectors are definitely doing well. In the local sectors, I think essential items are the ones which are actually doing extremely well. But the other sectors are still at the back foot and will take some time to actually get back to normal. Since you talked about vaccine, so if you have a vaccine by November, I think the first quarter of next year will be back again to normal. So, but if the vaccine is not there, then I think it's more likely the first quarter of the fiscal year next year will be the comeback position.
Right. So you're also the founder of the Hiranandani Group. So, how is the real estate sector doing and how is it coping with the pandemic?
So across the board, the real estate sector is certainly not doing well because demand is being postponed and people are not buying today. But those people who want ready products are certainly buying today, and they find that they want to buy a house. They're quite fed up in living a tenanted house and had trouble during this pandemic, where they could not bring even their relatives to their home, which was a tenanted house. So they finally realized that they need to buy a house. A house is a home and a security for any Indian in the long run. And nobody in India can grow old without having bought a house. So I think it's extremely important to buy a house. And this could be the right time to buy because the GST is 5%, affordable housing is 1%, interest is 7%, which is the lowest ever. There's a 3% interest subvention in the case of an affordable house. So I think that's a positive sign. But overall, real estate is in difficulty in the short run, but it will revamp. The possibilities of it coming back is there. The only thing is that people have postponed actually closing matters. And though we see a lot of interest, even on the digital media, we have a lot of people interested to buy houses.
But will there be a price correction in the industry? Do you see that because of demand?
Price correction has already taken place. So I don't think that is much of an issue now. The only thing is you can't reduce it further because the Section 43CA of the Income Tax Act prohibits you from reducing it further and otherwise charges you a penalty of 35% to pay income tax by the buyer and 35% on the differential by the seller. So the Income Tax Act prohibits any further reduction in price. This is the only section in the entire Income Tax Act which actually prohibits a person from reduction of price. And we have represented to the Finance Minister to make this correction, which she has not done up till now, but we are hoping that it will happen soon.
But it doesn't allow for a price correction beyond a certain point?
Yeah, beyond 10% or beyond 10% of the ready reckoner rate or the circle rate. Prime Minister wants a correction, Gadkari wants a correction, Piyush Goyal wants a correction. They don't know that your own law doesn't permit a correction.
That's an interesting thing, sir. Okay, also, the government announced those clearances of those real estate projects and that whole rescue window. Does it really help the situation on the ground? Especially, it was announced a long time back, and finally, we're only seeing a movement now.
Ramya, let me tell you, this was announced last year. They set it up in the last November. And now the distribution taking place. And the total package is of 25,000. Now, this was much before the pandemic took place. And hence the requirement of funding, according to our estimates, was anything between 25 and 50,000 crores, which would be the last mile funding needed. Today, we have represented both to the Finance Minister and to the Prime Minister and to the Reserve Bank that the amount needed now is 1,50,000 crores. But we don't need a subsidy. We don't want a subsidy. On the same lines as the Swami Fund, which is managed by the State Bank of India, various banks and financial institutions are ready to fund the last mile because it's a viable project. These are all viable projects, but they don't have last mile funding. So we have suggested, and HDFC is willing, Kotak Bank is willing, other banks and financial institutions, ICICI is willing. They're all willing to set up this fund in order to see that the last mile funding to the industry is done. But the government will have to clear this proposal on the lines of Swami Fund, which has happened. In the case of Swami Fund, the central government has committed 10,000 crores. In this, I'm not asking for any money from the central government. We have enough people who will fund it, but we need to clear these alternative investment funds in order to give it. So we have represented on that both to RBI, to the Finance Ministry, and to the Housing Ministry.
Okay. So are you also looking for any relaxations in RERA, any further relaxations in RERA?
We have got almost everything that we wanted, which is getting the time frame on the whole thing. There is one thing in RERA which is really troubling us, which has been right from day one, which is that RERA has control on the buyer and the seller and the components who enter the agreement. But they have no control on the approving authority. The approving authorities many times don't give permissions, they delay the permissions. People know in many cases it's a heavily corrupt area, and it becomes difficult to get all these permissions. So I think RERA authorities need to, the law needs to be amended to include governmental authorities also to be included in terms of it, so that the RERA chairman or the authorities can also give direction to the approving authorities to give the permissions quickly and expeditiously. And this would be in line with the Prime Minister's commitment of ease of doing business, which is there.
And these approving authorities are the state level, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, most of them. There are some at the central level. For instance, permission which has to be given in the case of environmental clearance, though many of them have been delegated to the states also. The committees do sit, but they are from the central government thing. Yes, most of them, you're right, is from the state. Or the local authority, and the local authorities.
So ease of doing business, at least for real estate companies, still remains a work in progress, right?
Yeah, but there has been a tremendous amount of improvement. So I must compliment the Housing Ministry has really done a good job. And you must have seen the World Bank rating has come tremendously, improved tremendously in the real estate sector. So a lot of online approvals, this, that, and the other is there. But as things would want to be, there is always some things at the local level which we can continue to improve.
Right. So there's also been a call of making India self-reliant. Given India's dependence on imports, how feasible do you think this is, or how practical it is, at least in the near term?
See, Atmanirbhar Bharat is a beautiful concept. It's a talk of self-sufficiency. It does not talk about isolation from the rest of the world. I think people are confusing the two issues that you can't do it. Their trade balance is already surplus. The price of oil has come down. Things have improved tremendously. So there is no reason to worry about this thing. As long as there is self-sufficiency in terms of it, it should be good. Yes, there must be replacement into the Indian market, and we are going to do it. But are we going to isolate ourselves from the world, rest of the world, and the benefits of the world? So if something beautiful is produced anywhere in the world, can we not import it? The answer is yes, we should be allowed. But we should work towards self-reliance and self-sufficiency, which is definitely an important component of everything that we do. We have neglected to do that because, again, labor reforms were required, various other things in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of factories to be done. Let's take the example in the last year, about 42 companies left China in textile industry. How many came to India? 2. How many came to Vietnam? 23. Now, obviously, that itself is an indication very, very clearly that there is something missing in terms of what we can possibly do. And hence, we should study what are the deficiencies in order to improve it. All the states are now working towards it, and I see a lot of difference, both in terms of labor reforms, electricity duties, electricity tariffs. Many of the states have been subsidizing agricultural electricity subsidies by commercial ones. So the factories are overpaying, while obviously that's making them not competitive. So we need to actually do the reforms. And if you want to give a subsidy to the farmers, It should be given clearly instead of charging more from industry, which makes them non-competitive.
So, the government also placed a lot of curbs on countries with whom we have land borders in terms of the companies and government procurement from these companies, which is obviously expected to impact China. Do you think this would impact our sectors like infra because of the fact that, Chinese companies are major players, at least in the infrastructure sector?
What you said before is correct, which is that in the short run, it's not possible to do so. One should not try to make it done like an instant coffee book that you can't do everything. There are important pharmaceutical, chemicals, other things which are imported from China. There are lots of goods to be imported from China. And I think they should continue to be. But there are things which we don't need to import from China. And that becomes extremely important. Why do we want to have buying furniture for China, for example? Because they give you a cheaper furniture at a more affordable, a good quality furniture at an affordable price. Why is it that the Indian industry cannot do that? So those are the type of areas where we should actually be Atmanirbhar. But we don't need to be Atmanirbhar in everything that is being done, and we should take best advantage of the world. So whether it is China or it is any other country in the world, just now, of course, we have a problem with China specifically. But why should we surrender the security of India to any other country in economic terms? So I think it's extremely important to be what the Prime Minister said, Atmanirbhar, and we really need to do it. And we have been doing it. The only thing is that we have surrendered a lot of ideas and thoughts to China in terms of manufacturing. And we are not alone in the world to do so. America has done it, Europe has done it, every country in the world has surrendered to China. And I think it's time, this is a right thing to do, that we should refocus. But why do we need it tomorrow morning? You can't do it like that. Economics and manufacturing can't be set up overnight. And I must add, if you want to set up factories, if you want to set up infrastructure projects, we don't have a bank which can even finance such infrastructure projects. We don't have any bank. We only have commercial banks now, which actually borrow in the short run. And so they are not possible for them to cater to large infrastructure projects. So it has been ASSOCHAM's demand, and I think of other associations also, to have an infrastructure bank, something like what IFCI was before, IDBI was there before, ICICI used to be
Development Finance Institution.
Development Finance Company, bank. Now, we do need something like that to come back again. And it's very essential, because otherwise you will be a mismatch of funds, and the banks will always be in trouble of borrowing short and lending long.
But say India has, we have an Indian Infrastructure Finance Company Limited, which was set up. Then, the whole the NIIF came in. But there have been many organizations that probably they have not been able to bring in that kind of an infra funding that is required.
See, if you have not succeeded somewhere, there's all the more reason why you need to do it in future. There was no the print before. Now you have the print. So to say that it is not there, in fact, is an opportunity. So why would you look at it? Because money is available. I mean, money for such a bank worldwide is available. Lots of people are willing to put in money. Look at the money got by HDFC Bank, or by Kotak Mahindra Bank, or by HDFC Limited, or any of the other financial institutions. All the foreign people want to invest into such a company. So I don't think that if somebody headed it, and I think the name that comes to my mind is Mr. K.V. Kamath, who just now was looking after the bank in Shanghai, I believe. I don't remember the name of the bank, but it was a bank which was relating to our 5 countries put together. And a person who has been responsible to putting up ICICI and then this bank, a person of that stature needs to actually come back and put up, a huge bank back again for infrastructure.
Right. And my last question, sir, what is your outlook for Indian industry and Indian economy? Do you see a sharp, rebound in 2021-22?
I am very bullish. My gut feel is that we should get a vaccine by November, December, because the amount of effort and money and concentration put into it, we will get a vaccine. Whether that vaccine will be from China or it will be from our country or it will be from any other country in the world. And I hope it is our country which actually creates the virus, the vaccine. And hence, I do feel that next year we will get a we rebound back quite naturally. And if it does happen, my belief is that you'll have a positive rate of growth of at least 2%, by 2 to 3% by the mid of next year. But if it is postponed, that could be postponed by another 3-4 months. But I think the opening out is taking place. And the very fact that the last checking in Delhi and Mumbai has shown that a lot of people have already gone through the virus and things are all right. Even otherwise, if the virus is, if a vaccine is not found, I think the plateau will take place because it would have already spread and people would have already got through it and come out of it also. So I think there'll be a positive trend by Jan of 2021.
And the risk aversion among consumers, risk aversion among companies, risk aversion among banks will all go away by then?
That depends on how you instigate demand. Ramya, there I think the government is at fault. They haven't come out with a measure which actually will help this happening. Till today, everybody is so afraid of the virus, afraid of the economics, afraid of their jobs, afraid of their position. They're obviously not going to spend. But the moment you create a trigger and people start buying, then it follows up. There's always a herd mentality, whether it's about the virus or it is about the spending. People follow the herd. And my view is that Jan 2021, you are going to see that, shoot up, even if the vaccine is not found, because by that time, the general plateauing and the spread of all the virus will have gone through most of the population, at least in the urban areas. So I think the demand in these segments will actually come back and things will show it. But there will be sectors which will be still in pain. And those sectoral issues will have to be done. For instance, hotels in Goa, hotels in tourist destinations, how do they really come back? So they may have a little longer period of gestation before they can actually come back into it.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time and speaking to us. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramya.
Thank you.